Very good evening to all. Welcome all to another session for Friday Waters Thesis Club. The Friday Waters is an extension of the flagship program Wednesdays for Water of the W for W Foundation. The idea of Friday Waters is to wet the Fridays with and yet fruitful activities for the future generations. Friday Water series has water talkies, book reading, thesis club, water arts, and meet a maestro, some of them taking once a month depending on the speaker's availability. The focus of the thesis club is on bringing students and scholars who have done are researching some aspects of water matters to the session in order to discuss with them their identified problems, aim, objective, methodology, research, design, fieldwork findings, and learning. In the process, know about the making of the research and the contribution it aims to make it science and society. The session is also meant to increase the outreach of the research and the researcher. Hi, I'm Ekta Gupta. I am the host for today and moderator for today's Thesis Club session. I am joined by Dr. Mansee Bal Bhargava from W for W Foundation as discussant for today's session. For today's session, we welcome Ritika Rajput to share a topic related to her PhD research. The title of her presentation today is Both Gaya Waters, Pre and Post World Heritage Political Industrial Ecology. Welcome, Ritika. Now I invite Dr. Mansee to include speaker and rule for the presentation. Welcome,
Thank
Mansee.
you,
Over
Ekta.
to you.
Thank you, Ekta, and holy greetings to all those who are here and those who are on the live show at YouTube. And first of all, thank you, Ritika, to also agree to do this session on this auspicious day. And before I set the rules of the game, I would also like to introduce our young scholar today, who is a PhD candidate at the United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, abbreviated as UNU-IAS in Tokyo, Japan. Her PhD research investigates historical and contemporary water management practices, focusing on how socio-economic and ecological activities shape the urban water metabolism of Bodh Gaya in India. Previously, she was a Smart Cities fellow with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and Urban Fellow at the Indian Institute for Human Settlement, Bangalore. She completed her Master's in Ecology and Environmental Studies from Nalanda University, Rajgir, and Bachelor of Science from Jamia Millia Islamia, which is a Central University in New Delhi. So Ritika, welcome once again to Friday Waters Thesis Club. You are also sitting on our session after 100 sessions completed. So we are really excited to really have so many of our alternate ways of talking about water in this Friday Water session. And also thank you for sharing your presentation much ahead of time. So which made me also think about the work, and I also managed to do a little bit of Google here and there. Visually attractive, and also I was really appreciative of the concept which you are going to introduce to us. And it's really well grounded. I have not studied Gaya, Bodh Gaya ever, so I'm really looking forward to your presentation. Now, the rule of the game is that you will have around 20 to 25 minutes, and then we will set up on a discussion with your uh, presentation, and I will have some questions in the beginning, and then I will take questions from here, and if there is any in the live session. And over to you, Ritika, and thanks once again. You may now share your presentation also, or if you have any opening remarks, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mansee and Ekta, for giving me this opportunity to speak at this beautiful initiative that you have taken to disseminate knowledge in different ways. So it's really remarkable work. And because of this work, I came across to, looked at all those videos and came across to new ideas and attended some of your sessions. So amazing work you're doing. So I'm going to speak about Bodh Gaya. And before I begin to speak about my presentation, I would like to let you know that I have been working on Bodh Gaya for more than 5 years now. My PhD thesis is sort of an extension of my master thesis. It is like I'm filling my own gaps that I found in my master thesis, and I already have some publications from there, and now also working on some of them in my PhD. So as you know that I'm a PhD student at United Nations University, and UNU has, just a bit of introduction to my institute
Yes,
as a
please.
respect, and also like people are not aware of what is UNU. So UNU has this year completed 50 years.
Wow.
And the youngest one is actually UNU-IAS. It is now like 10 year, completed its 10 year last year. So like a decadal or old institution in Tokyo. And UNU-IAS is also a headquarter for other UNU. So there are around 13 UNU across the world.
Yes.
And each UNU has a focus. So there are UNU wider in Germany, which has a focus on economics. And for example, there's another UNU in Africa, which has a focus on natural resources. And this one has the focus on sustainability. So that was about my institution. And the building that you see in the background is actually the headquartered building of UNU. And it's like beautiful, situated in the bustling city center of Tokyo at Shibuya. So if you ever get the chance to be at Shibuya, please visit this place. Yeah, so let me begin and talk about Bodh Gaya. And I'll begin to just give you an introduction. What is Bodh Gaya and why I'm talking about it, and why is it this place is so important for me personally, and has been spending so many years there. So Bodh Gaya is a place, or is a site where Buddha got enlightened around 2,500 years ago. And it is considered as the cradle of Buddhism. So it's a place where Buddhism actually born. And its importance in the world is as important as Jerusalem or Makkah. So this place is considered also as the navel of the earth in Buddhist scriptures. It's the place where the earth begin to form first and will ever end the last. So the importance of this place for both religiously and also politically is super significant. In terms of the urban setup of the town is now a municipality, which is in terms of Bihar governance is a Nagar Parishad. That happened in 2022, like only just 2 years before. Before that, it was a Nagar Parishad with a very small area, like 19 square kilometer and a population of 48,000. But now its area got almost doubled. So here it is written 35 square kilometer because that's how it is gadgeted. But when you map, and I found that it is more than 50 square kilometer now. And the population is around 1 lakh. That's according to the census of 2011, but now we are 1 decade ahead, so it's around 1 lakh. And just to give you a glimpse of how important this place is and how many tourists actually visit this place. So in the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya got labeled as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2002. And since then, the number of tourists in the town has been increased manifold. So if I just want to bring your attention to this graph. So you see from 2002, there's a steady increase. There's a steady increase in the number of tourists. So just to give you a number and keep it in your register, last year, 2024, around 2.5 million visitors come to Bodh Gaya. But you would be wondering why there are two dips. So let me first talk about 2013. There was a bomb blast in Mahabodhi temple, and you can see its repercussion on the number of tourists visited to the town. And the impact of COVID is pretty evident between 2020 and 2022. But what is also interesting that those 2.5 million of people visit this small town within a very small span of time, considered as the tourist season, which begins in the end of the November and in the beginning of March. So in this 4 months, there's this 2.5 million people visiting this very small agrarian small town. And to cater this huge influx of tourists, there are more than 160 hotels and monasteries. This number is a bit formal, but informally, there are more than 300 hotels and monasteries operating in and around the town. And actually, there have never been a data on how many monasteries and hotels in the town. So in my master thesis, I actually took up this task to, sort of map and understand and where and how, like, who are these monasteries and where are they? So, and I found that there are more than 300 of them, hotels and monasteries. So this is the Mahabodhi temple, and this is the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's the place where these tourists come. And to bring how in that sort of span of the time that I've been talking about, how the land use and land use change in the town. So if you look in 2001, there's like more than 70% of its land under agriculture. And when I'm talking about Bodh Gaya, what is also interesting, I'm talking about South Bihar. And South Bihar is a semi-arid region in Bihar. And I will bring you back into why I bring with the story of South Bihar later. And you see that in 2024, which is like last year, that's like 70%, it reduced to less than 40%. So that's the land use change we are talking about in the, and when I'm telling you that there's an increase in built up, and that increase is fundamentally mean the mushrooming of hotels and monasteries, which is I called tourism industry in my work. So this is fundamentally the tourism industry. There is no settlement. These are the like, Bodh Gaya is fundamentally the cluster of villages, which is labeled as a city for the sake of becoming it a global place for attracting tourists. But when I'm talking about these built up, these are hotels and monasteries. So you see this beautiful land use change. And in this backdrop of land use change, that's one point. And this number of tourists coming into the town, I'm looking at the one natural resource, which is water, the impact of this land use change and the tourism on the water. So this is like sort of my backdrop of my study. So my research objective is to assess the water flows of Bodh Gaya by using water mass balance equation before and after the designation of the World Heritage Site, which is like before is 2001 because it designated in 2002. And the after is 2019. I was doing 2 decades, but I didn't choose 2020 because of the COVID and that the impact could not be, visible because there was no tourist in that year. And secondly, I look at the impact of tourism on the water resources and examine the socio-economic inequalities in assessing water supply infrastructure, particularly looking at how infrastructure evolved and who gets the water and who doesn't. So that's my second thing. And also I want to bring your attention here that what the work I'm going to present and the research objective on top is only from one of my research objective. So there are other 3 research objective that I did not bring here just not to confuse and be more focused on what I'm trying to do. So this is only the 1 research question and 2 research objectives writing here. And you can see there, I also want to talk about these 2 pictures here. So the first is Old Tariri. And if you ever visit to Mahabodhi temple, there is a settlement just behind the Mahabodhi temple, known as Old Tariri. You would be wondering, why is it Old Tariri? Because there was a Tariri and now it is Old Tariri. Because there was a whole displacement happened to make the Mahabodhi temple the World Heritage Site, and they displaced whole village. Because if I tell you that Mahabodhi temple was actually a village temple, that became the World Heritage Site very later in the time period of its span. So they displaced whole village to make it World Heritage Site, and the remaining of that village is still there. And this is the situation you can see. And most of these people are scheduled caste people because when I'm also talking about Bodh Gaya and South Bihar, there's 40% of the population belonging to scheduled caste. And then scheduled caste is not a homogeneous category. In Bihar, they call Mahadalits. And even in Mahadalits, there are Musahars and Majis, which are the most downtrodden and most marginalized community. And this is the community that we are speaking about when I'm talking about the socioeconomic inequalities in the town, and look, bringing the gender that I will be talking in a bit. So to understand this work, because it is a thesis presentation and I want to reflect a bit on the process also. So for me, I was aware about the site. I was engaging with the site for the 5 years when I came into my PhD. So it was, you know the site, but you don't know how to look at it. And in academia, you always need a lens and framing and methodology to understand that site. And that was like my first year of PhD was that challenge to decide on, I can understand this through this, but but that will not give me answer of this. That's like I think it is a struggle of every PhD student. It happens two way. Either you know the framing and you don't know the site. And when you know the site and you don't know how to look at it in the literature, then it's become super complicated, trust me, because every other frame, you feel like, no, it doesn't work for my site. Because as we scholar from the global south, we know that this come from all these framings and idea of the research, how we look at the world come from global north, and it really does not speak to your site when you know it so well. So for me, the challenge was how to make it to speak to literature and the site. So, bridging that gap was a big challenge for me. And then I had to take up 2 frameworks to make it speak to what I really want to tell from the field. And I choose urban water metabolism and urban political ecology, and I marry them, and we will see how it works in complementary way. So let me just brief you first about urban water metabolism. So urban metabolism as a framework has been around since 1965, when Wallman presented this framework for American city, which is a hypothetical city, 1 million. But that framework has evolved a lot in the last 3 decades. And what is interesting about this framework is it looks at a city as an organism. The organism which thrives, which has an inflow, has a processes, and has a thriving, it grows, it excrete. So that's whole idea of organism operate in that idea. So if I give you an example of Bodh Gaya itself, not too much confuse you about it, and bring it to the water. So for example, Bodh Gaya is like a small town, which gets its water supply through water sources. And for example, it got its water supply 80 kilometers away from the town, from Ganges, through a lift store treat supply since 2022 November. The scheme called Ganga Jal Apurti Yojana, and the whole piped water in the town is supplied through this scheme. And I want you to register this point because I will be speaking about later in my presentation. And then groundwater and traditional irrigation system, because as I talked, Bodh Gaya is a part of the South Bihar, and South Bihar is this beautiful traditional irrigation system called Ahar Pine, and it is situated in that constellation of Ahar Pine, this is a small town, and it got its rainwater and the water through this Ahar Pine system for irrigation. And you would also be surprising to know that Bodh Gaya, since it has increased its land administration on site, like the administration boundaries, Bodh Gaya has still 60% of its land under agriculture. So agriculture is an essential part of its economy as well as livelihood. And then this whole water, both drinking and irrigation water, gets into the processes. So there's a household using the water. There are the tourism industry, which I told you is an important stakeholder in the whole process, and agriculture. And I'm looking at these 3 stakeholders for the sure because that's the major stakeholder in the town. And there are, and then there are wastewater and runoffs. And so it also looked at, so there are a lot of methods to understand urban water metabolism. The one that I'm interested was water mass balance equation, because it helps you to quantify the water flows, both natural as well as anthropogenic. When I say natural, it means like precipitation, evapotranspiration, infiltration. And when I say anthropogenic, it means the water that you're bringing into the city. like from 80 kilometer, because that couldn't possible naturally, right? There's an anthropogenic intervention happened there, and there's a wastewater generation. So these sort of flows are categorized as anthropogenic flow. So I hope that I could make you able to understand this very simply about this water mass balance and water metabolism. Let me bring you why I've used the other framing, urban political ecology. So what a water mass balance equation or urban metabolism helped us was to first identify the flows, like this water, these are the uses, and quantify the flows. But it doesn't tell us what is the politics of water, who is getting the water, who is not getting the water, who face the scarcity, who does not face the scarcity, what is this whole micro politics of water, I must say. And there I used a sort of bottom-up approach to look at it, and which is urban political ecology. It is also a, very well studied now in global south cities, and it looked at the city as a product of everyday social relations within the broader realm of social, political, ecological, economic processes happening in the town. So here I try to situate and focus myself to the question of gender and caste. Because as I told you, like 40% of this population is very vulnerable historically and is, as well as ecologically. And gender is always an important question within that vulnerability. The intersectionality of gender with caste makes it more vulnerable. And why I was interested in tourism, and that could be another interesting thing that we can discuss later on, and maybe in later discussions. And when you marry both of them, so there's an emerging field of study called political industrial ecology, and where metabolism studies with some qualitative urban political studies come together, marry them, and then there's happen to be the political industrial ecology. So urban metabolism is quantitative. It has it gives you a number. It helps you to understand the situation at a macro level. While urban political ecology is qualitative, it helps you to go into the details. It helps you to, engage directly with the people and try to understand how this macro speaks to the micro, and try to, bridge that gap and understand that situation. Within that, as I told you, I'm using water mass balance equation, and this equation I will be speaking about maybe in the next slide about it. And in terms of urban political ecology, in this paper, I used semi-structured interviews and document analysis. Okay, let's look at this equation. It's I don't want to dwell it much because it's a bit technical, but just to give a simple idea, it's just addition and subtraction. So there's something coming, inflow minus outflow is something stored, water, right? It's that simple. And if inflow is equals to outflow, that is like a perfect balance, and that's never achievable. So there's something up and down always there. And water mass balance equation was developed by Canway for urban areas in 2011. And for most of its work come from Australian cities. But Bol took this equation and modified it. What she added is the very important component, system loss, like non-revenue water. And that's like a big issue in the developing countries. And in case of Bangalore, she took up system loss as one of the things that important to look at to understand this water mass balance of developing countries. And Bangalore is the only case study from developing countries, actually. And now there are some studies coming from China, but from India, there is only one study from Bol, and I adopted that equation and modified it for Bodh Gaya. And now I'm in my next scale of work, I'm also modifying it more because I'm now using primary source of data, because these whole equation works on secondary sources, because as we know, developed countries keep that data for you to work with, but in developing countries, and for a small town, these data are not available. And let me tell you, I could do it for Bodh Gaya because Bodh Gaya is an important site, and there are like 5 master plans, city development plan on there, and there's my own work that helped me. But if you could take this equation and try to do it for another small town of India, you cannot.
No.
Trust me, don't try it. So that is like too essential. So I'm trying to modify this equation so that we can use it for a small towns. And that's my for 2024 water calculation. I will try to solve that modification. These are how you define the water flow. I will speak about 2 or 3. For example, centralized water supply. It means fundamentally means piped water supply. And I told you about where it's getting like from 80 kilometer. That's one example. Decentralized water supply is groundwater. So whatever the tourism industry or tourist water consumption is happening in the town, precipitation, runoff, and the leakage, I told you, that non-revenue water. And these are the source. So interviews I have been conducting interviews, so many, but I've used 33 interviews in this paper, and I focused. It's always difficult to focus the studies and take the chunks from your huge data set. So I were able to do that. Coming to the results, the old Bodh Gaya showed you was 19.5 at a square kilometer. So first, look at because I'm doing a comparative study to evaluate this. So 2001, there were this number of people coming to town, but in 2019, you can see how the number has increased. And centralized water supplies also has increased a lot. And in my qualitative assessment, I will tell you how and why. Wastewater generation has increased a lot, and this became the biggest issue in the town because the town does not have any sewage system at the place. And even when I say the traditional irrigation system, and you must be amazed to hear that the traditional irrigation system, the pines are operating as a sewage system into the town, creating another level of water logging issue because it works on the logic of geographic, right? It has been there for 5,000 years, and it is for the purpose of irrigating the fields, not for taking your wastewater. So there's an immense problem of this water logging, and the water logging is actually the sewage water logging. You can see around the Bodh Gaya. And groundwater seepage has reduced, obviously, because the build-up has increased, so the seepage has reduced. And the leakage has increased so much fold. So 147 MLD, million liter per day, to 919 million liter a day. And you would be surprising why so much leakage is happening in this town. And I will come to this question, maybe just to give you a small introduction to how water supply infrastructure in Bodh Gaya has evolved. Very surprisingly, Bodh Gaya got its first water supply back in 1956. I mean, that would be surprising for any other town in India. And it got its supply even when it was not a town because of, and why 1956? Because it's the year when there was a Mahaparivana festival in the town. It means the enlightenment of Buddha completed 2,500 years in that year. So Bodh Gaya got its first water supply, first sewage system, and this was, you can see it was under the rural water supply and sanitation program. And later it was handed to the PHED when, in 1980s when it became a administrative Nagar Panchayat notified area. From 1956 to 2011, there was no other intervention. So there were 2 overhead tanks done by PHED, and there were only 800 households were covered in that span of the time. Then Bodh Gaya is important, so it got selected as a JNNURM city in 2011. Actually in 2006, but the master plan didn't work well, the city development plan, I must say. But maybe we can talk about it later because there's a very interesting story why it didn't work. I can tell you in the discussion part. And it targeted to cover 6,000 households because that was the number of households back around 2011 census. It was done by Jindal Water Infrastructure Limited, and 2 years back, 2023, it got handed over to Nagar Parishad under the engineering, procurement, and construction work. And in Bihar, every work and implementation is done by BUDCO, which is a parastatal organization, Bihar Urban Development Corporation Limited under Bihar government. And Nagar Parishads or Nagar Panchayat has very little or no role to play. And lastly, in 2022, there's a Ganga Jalapurti Yojana I've talked about. So let me focus just on 2009, 1 and 19. So you see that the piped water supplies actually decreased from 17% coverage to 9.4% coverage. So there's fundamentally no such increase in the number of people getting water through piped waters. Hand pumps is almost same, or borewells. And community taps has actually increased because Jindal has put some more community taps in and around. This is sort of looking at, this is from Miyabiga, a settlement in Bodh Gaya, and the stand post, and you see the level of inequality. And she's one of the Manji women who's taking water from this stand post, say the clean water, and she came from around 100 meter, like 1 kilometer her home, and she comes like 3 times in a day whenever the water comes. Sometimes they keep waiting for the water and water does not come because the Ganga Jalapurti Yojana, really people did not send the water, and now they only send the Ganga water in the town. So they keep waiting for the water. And now the water situation become worse after Ganga Jalapurti Yojana actually implemented. And the another issue that the water has a repercussion over sanitation. So there's this quote from the water is a major issue, and we have given toilets to the people, but toilet needs water, and you don't have water. So the open defecation is super prevalent in Bodh Gaya. So more than 80% of the Manji community like practice open defecation. So that's like the situation at present. And while I was telling you the leakage of the water, and there's another very interesting story. So the piped water that Jindal has put is actually how this is on the roads of Bodh Gaya. And it is, if I let you know that now the roads of Bodh Gaya is actually getting cleaned by the Ganga water, there would be no overstatement to that. Because they put infrastructure so badly into the town, and the blue pipes are everywhere. That's what the Jindal water is known in the town, because the PhD water was the, what do you call it, the lohe wala pipe, the iron cast water pipe, and this is the plastic pipe water. They put it like this, and you can see this pipe like a spaghettis of blue pipes everywhere in the town. This is the situation that we are talking about. Sanitation situation, this is not a part of this work, but I want to bring your attention to this extreme sanitation problem in the town. So the Manji communities, or the tolas, that's what is the settlement of the Mahadalit tolas and Dalit tolas in the town, do not have any drainage system. So whatever the water they use, they just have a pit in front of their home and they fill it. And this is the next level of health hazard creation happening in the town. And we found on the field that the child mortality rate in this settlement are extremely high. We met women who have lost their 4 and 5 kids, and which is like, and there are a lot of skin problems. And this is, I mean, I don't want to speak about it anymore, because whenever I used to visit these tolas, I always ended up crying, because you cannot do anything, but you just like try to document and try to bring it to the Nagar Parishad and the people in the Nagar Parishad, but the changes are very slow and there are fundamentally no changes. And I just want to sum it up with a few sort of points. The first story of Bodh Gaya is the infrastructure failure. So there has been attempts to have a water supply through piped water since 1956, and we couldn't achieve much. There's a story of governance failure. So there's a multiplicity of governance. There's a parastatal organization sitting in Patna. There are Nagar Parishad. There are public entities like Jindal, and they are messed up, and no one is actually responsible for water. Even for data, you go any of them and they were like, we are not responsible for it. And there's over abstraction of water for sure by the tourism industry and by agriculture, because this whole Ahar pine system has got disrupted in the town because pines are now operating as sewage. And there's a huge social inequality issue in assessing water especially by the Musahar communities. And I want to conclude with this general planning and policy recommendation, because I'm from United Nations University, and our first job is to make some recommendations. And I could not bring the SDGs here, but our another job was always to, like what SDG you are trying to cater. So coming to the planning from Bodh Gaya is tourist water consumption needs to be accounted in water and urban planning in India. So even when they are planning for the tourist cities, they just took the, what we call floating population as only 20%. But for such towns, their floating population is like 100 times more than their population. So how this traditional approach needs to be calibrated and recalculated, accounting social inequalities like gender and caste that we all have been arguing for so long. Like we need to look at these things and checking if the water abstraction for, I think it's true for whole over India, how we are abstracting groundwater and prioritize water allocation for residents. Recommendation for Bodh Gaya is first to just, address its spatial and social inequalities. So they say West live in the East. So hotel and monasteries are like West, and the whole rest of the population is East. And they do not speak to each other. So if I go in any of the monastery, they are like amazing, beautiful islands of prosperity. But out there is just too gloomy. And there's a huge urgency to look at the water and waste infrastructure in the town. And commenting on the analytical framework, political industrial ecology really helped me to, bridge this gap of quantitative, qualitative, bottom up, top down, and try to communicate and bridge this gap between the, framing. And that was like the biggest challenge, and I'm still struggling with that truly. There's like, I've already published something from my master's, and not based on this framework. It is like the exploratory study to look at Bodh Gaya and its water, and it's called Water Economics of Bodh Gaya. And I could do that. I did it, and that's why I could do the next step, which is like making this calculation, because I have some data to, from where I can do this. And there's if someone wants to have it a very summary, like a brief summary of what I've written in the paper, is just Indian Water Portal has published this summary. And while I was talking about the Ahar Pine, I have recently published this very small thing on Ahar Pine irrigation system in South Bihar, and to highlight the work of Niranjana River Recharge Mission. So it is a non-profit in working in South Bihar for reviving of Niranjana River. Niranjana River is the Falgu. Niranjana and Mohana makes up and make Falgu, which is one of the most pious river in Buddhism and Hinduism. And this non-profit is trying to regenerate this river. And recently, recently Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India, has recognized their work and put forward the Namami Niranjana Abhiyan based on Namami Ganga Abhiyan to rejuvenate the river. So thank you very much. I would love to conclude my thought with this quote from Buddha: "Cease doing evil, try to do good." And I think I've taken a lot of time because I've been working on Bodh Gaya and been speaking about it. It's just sorry for that.
Absolutely fine. Yeah. Okay, may I request you to close your PowerPoint, and I have your slides with me, so that should be fine, and I can take things from here. Ekta, with your due permission, we can start the Q&A, right? Yeah. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, and I am not surprised if you are emotionally carried away, and it is absolutely fine if you have taken a little bit more time. I could feel the emotions when you were presenting, and it is also very heartening to see a master's student taking the project to PhD level. And that also shows your level of commitment and concern to the place. And especially now that I know that you don't belong to that place, it is still that you are holding on to that study, and also realizing the importance of the study. And now coming to the point that you are at United Nations University, and this is where have to start talking about the problem of not only water, but the problem of rising disparity. And Bodh Gaya is just one of the classic examples to see. And you very nicely summed it up: when you go to the monasteries and the hotels, it's a completely different world. So India is living this kind of, now I say, three worlds, to be honest: the super rich and the middle class, and then we have the others of the society. And unfortunately, the governance system itself is has submitted to this different class and has not really taken that extra step required to hold on to the constitutional duty to be able to provide everyone. Now, given that situation, and I'm quite amazed with the case of Bodh Gaya, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's my first exposure to the Bodh Gaya situation. And it is also for me heart wrenching to see how the indigenous community, I will call, without giving the tag of scheduled caste or scheduled
Yeah.
tribe, they are the actual landholders or owners or indigenous people of the place. And here comes a set of people, they can be any a set of people, and it's like a colonizing the place, but at the same time extracting the resource of the place for their own favor, and then marginalizing the original people. And before the original people really realize that they have been exploited and marginalized, it is too late for them, and probably they also have their own limitations of not self-organizing and going about it. And it was also interesting to see how you bridged in the ahar pine, which was the lifeline of water system of the place, and now they have become the drainage system of the place. But you will be also looking at different parts of the country where you see we have extensive data on water supply, which you also presented in a very nice way. But then when it comes to, and you made it very interesting when you talked about urban metabolism and related it with organism, when you say, when you said that cities breathe, eat, and excrete. So if we have information on breathing and eating, we don't have information on breathing, but at least we have information on eating and drinking. We do not produce that much of information and data on excreting, and drainage is an important part of that, which is a challenge for across the country. But what makes it more concerning in a place like Bodh Gaya is the load with the resident and the floating population. We saw it in Prayagraj now in Allahabad, a tiny city holding on to millions of people, and it does not have its own capacity with even
Yeah.
80 drains. They are not called pines there. So I will pose some questions. I had many questions, but the way you presented and you took your time, I'm happy that many of my questions are already answered. So I had also importantly, I understood that you are not presenting your entire research, but a part of the research that also answers my some questions. So, and it's a very good idea that you did not present the whole research, because when I was looking at your conceptual diagram, I felt that you made a linear kind of a relationship between urban political ecology and urban metabolism. But then each of these concepts are complex by their inherent nature, which you explained it in a very beautiful way. So my first question to you will be that when we know that we have this situation, and you may have also realized the data crunch, which you are saying that you are building it by yourself. What is the challenge that the local authority? I know you also talked about the parasital organization, which is kind of remote controlling the little town. But
Yeah.
what is the challenge of the local municipality to really not develop the data on the excretion part or the drainage part of the city? Why can't they really develop this water balance data, at least data, if not on the ground, but at least the data part? Do you think they are in the process of building that data to really develop this urban water metabolism, this mass, the quantitative at least have it on their system, and then they can plan for it? Because they cannot just exploit the ahar system just because they are silently sitting there and they were present from antiquity. What's your take? How readiness level? What is the readiness level?
So it's a bit complex question, because given, as you already contextualize it to that India, like the cities do not have that data. And
Hmm.
talking about the urban local bodies in Bihar, so being urban in Bihar is a very new thing. So
Hmm.
their whole structure of urban governance is yet to be developed. So data comes at a very next level, like who has the responsibility to what. So just to give you an example that these cities got its first town planner last year, 2023.
Wow.
So, and that's true for the whole Bihar. There was no idea of like if you compare it, the urban governance to Maharashtra, which is considered as the sort of best example in the country because that's where whole idea comes from.
Comparative best.
Yeah,
Comparative best.
and that's why it's in India comparatively best. In that way, Bihar, like they're only like 10%, according to 2011 census, 10% of its population live in urban centers, which is an underestimation, but whatever ways. So the first is they do not have a governance structure. So all their employees are contractual. They got first town planner this year, 2024, and a city sanitation officer, which I believe is a very good initiative from the end of from Bihar government, at least to begin with. So the first is like there is no fundamental governance structure to build on. The second challenge is given to the question of drainage and wastewater system, and I should not put it in online, but I really want to set this example out there that Bodh Gaya got its drainage infrastructure in JNNURM as water supply and allocated around 90 plus crore rupees for the implementation in this town. In paper, it got completed, but it is never materialized. So if
Every
you
city, same story, by the way, huh? So you don't have to be hesitant about it.
Yeah, but never materialized. So who is doing what and where the things are happening? So it really always make me question at every stage of the governance. So
yeah,
even having that data reports does not make any change on the ground, and the stories of what is happening to the pine in the system. And I also want to bring you to that Bodh Gaya got its first master plan in 1966. That was got published in 1964 and gazetted in 1966. And Indira Gandhi signed it at front page with her quote. And that never got implemented.
So what is the master plan right now working then? Because you made a very interesting remark that the city in a way is developed into pockets of this, high end, and then in between the indigenous people are living which are in a very poor condition. So is it still operating like a collective milieu of villages and resorts and monasteries? Is it like that? So how is the land dealing happening then?
So
I'm
both
quite
yes,
curious.
to look at that, so urban question in India is agriculture question. It's an agrarian question, right? And so to understand that, we have to look at the agrarian history. So and that's like a whole together different ball game. But just to give you an anecdote, Bodh Gaya was till 1980s was under a zamindar. Bodh Gaya Mutt was the main zamindar in the town, and it had the land more than the Bihar government then. And that was
in
so
terms
difficult.
of a consolidated land mass, they
Yes.
were
So all these Mahadalits and Dalits were the begars to the Kamyas, were the begars to the Mahant. And Mahabodhi temple was also under the Mahant. And that was a Soviet Shankaracharya Mutt. And there is a whole Hindu-Buddhist contestation, and I don't want to go there. It's
because right now also it has
Yes.
erupted again. So
and there's too much literature also on there, so don't want to touch that. But what is interesting is I want to bring to your attention that we need to look at that agrarian history. So J.P. Narayan movement happened in late 1970s, and then the land from the Mahant was taken by and distributed among the these Dalits and those who were the landless, and there was a whole corruption story in there, and there's even
one problem solving led to other problems.
Super crisis problems. So all these begars, so just to give you another anecdote, so all these Dalit tolas were the begars of Mahant, and they were having no land rights because Mahant used to let them, and these tolas are now the slum into the town because they do not have land tenure security.
Hmm. Now
So
that also speaks a lot, speaks
yeah,
volume, because why not infrastructure there?
and why not infrastructure? So there is
Hmm.
a huge vicious spiral of what you're
Hmm.
doing and how you're taking into the account of, and you never try to solve that tenure insecurity issue. And that tenure security issue led to repercussively the formation of slums, and that's like a different story.
Yeah. But if I pull a line from United Nations and also from our own constitution in terms of provision of water, earlier it was provision of water, but then now it is also extended to provision of drainage as a fundamental right, whether land is secured or not. Now it's a duty of any government. I mean, even I recall something reading from Maharashtra High Court that I mean, whether land holding is there or not, provision of services is like a kind of fundamental
Mhm.
responsibility of the state to provide. And I mean, if I go with that logic also, but let me tell you, it's not only in both Gaya as well that the whole discriminatory aspect. Even in Ahmedabad, just 11 kilometers from my house, we have a location where there is no water supply and drainage because it's a communal issue. It is considered as not officially, but not part of India. Just to give you an idea, I mean, that
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
understood, understood.
communal notions we carry with ourselves. So the way society yeah, and social norms are carried, unfortunately, that also percolates in the governance and management system. And this is where we fail the very essence of the constitutional work. I mean, even United Nations, because India is signatory to United Nations. I mean, along with its own constitutional, obligations for the society. So I'm just trying to understand from you further in case of both Gaya, and especially because if I again link it with SDGs, it's not only poverty issue, it's not only health and well-being issue. I'm sure there is issue of education, but I want to just jump into the gender, I mean, SDG 5 and SDG 6 after touching the SDG 1 and SDG 3 because of the drainage. I'm touching the health issue and all. And then it also percolates into SDG 11 when we talk about sustainable cities and communities. I mean, in that sense. So, I mean, do you think there is any dialogue or interaction happening in terms of pre and post, because that was your study? So after it has been declared as UNESCO heritage site, there has to be more interaction on the governance aspect to deal with this kind of system, because it cannot be a kind of a piecemeal arrangement. Okay, here UNESCO will take care, or UNESCO norms will be adhered to, and here we can just neglect. So I mean, now my question is more of a lay person question. So if I go to Bodh Gaya, a person who can afford things, can I bypass seeing these things? I think no. You go through the unstructured, or undeveloped or unplanned infrastructure system to reach your so-called elite club. Is that how it is, or it is a clear discrimination of east and west? Because let me again tell you, from Ahmedabad, we have Sabarmati River dividing the two parts of the cities, and honestly, it is also very literally east and west. Huh? So people living in the west are rarely going to the east, and west in west notion also, like the developed notion, and east in east notion also, that not developed notion. So even in a city like Ahmedabad, we are seeing. So I mean, I'm just curious to understand, because you showed a very interesting development of land use over time. I mean, from 10% to then now it is nearly 40% developed. And what was more interesting, that there is even agriculture still happening within the urban, so-called urban boundary. So in that situation, how do you see this whole pocket of elitism and ghettoism? I mean, elitism itself is a ghettoism in that sense. I mean, how do they coexist, and how a local authority can surpass infrastructure to the from the underprivileged and reach the privileged people? I mean, why I'm asking this question is probably they are using their own water, groundwater. That is one possibility. But then, even if they're using their groundwater, they have to throw water out.
Yeah, yeah. So,
I mean, how is it that working?
so just to uh, in my whole argument, I missed this very essential information, and you brought it up here, and it's important to underscore it. So when I was asking this question of water scarcity, so whole tourism industries depend on groundwater, and they have
Huh,
6 and 7 bore wells up to
huh.
600 feet into the
And
ground.
they can put as big motor as they want, of
Yes.
course.
And they have swimming pools, and like some of the hotels have like 6 swimming pools and things. So for sure. So when I ask these monasteries for the water scarcity, they never face one. But the
Hmm.
locals face it a lot, especially in
Hmm.
the month of May and June. It's so becomes so difficult because for them, the hand pump or bore well, the hand pumps are generally 40 to 50, while the
Hmm.
bore well is 100. And the water these days, because of the oil obstruction and how climate change is happening, is go that deeper. So the water scarcity is an issue for the locals, but not for the monasteries and hotels. That's the like first thing. Coming to the drainage and the wastewater arrangement, all these monasteries and hotels let their water get into these
That is where the
pines,
fines
and,
come
and
in.
that's
Yes.
where this whole water logging
What
and health hazard issue
to
became
the
the
others, not in their own campuses then.
yeah, not in them, obviously. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just like when I ask them, where does your wastewater go? Because I also surveyed these monasteries and hotels for my 2024 calculations and
Hmm.
estimations, because that's you cannot do with the secondary data. And they were like, like that's also like their issue also for that, because at some point of the time the wastewater generation is so much that it's become difficult to sort of take that water out, and thankfully there is no rain during the tourist season.
Hmm.
If there would be a rain, then it's
It will be
become
havoc. I think they will be more careful then,
yeah, but that then it will become like
just by luck.
super challenging. So the
Hmm.
water logging issue that happens in the and that's also it's also has a repercussion on farming. So when I
Hmm.
asked Nagar Parishad, oh, how are you catering with the farmers? And the one of the like the city engineer tell me, oh, you don't know, both is a city, there are no farmers. I was like, I'm working in here for 5 years, please.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
have a city and no farmers doesn't
So
make
I
really
think there
sense.
is a serious data, not only data provision, but then also authenticity of the data within the municipal governance is extremely
Yeah,
important
there is.
across the country. In Ahmedabad, we don't tell that all the lakes and river is filled by Narmada. On paper, it is nowhere written.
Yeah, so that's a challenge, and this wastewater gets into the farms of these villagers
Hmm.
who
Hmm.
does farming, and and that's because the whole pine works on a logic of a hard pine, and that there's a slope
Yes,
and water goes in there
gravity. Huh.
because
Hmm.
the river is up there, and the pine water goes in there, and then some downline it met again to the river. So it has a
Hmm.
logic to go like this. And when the crop is ready, and these and then I talked to the Nagar Parishad chairperson. She's a woman from Manji community, and she told me, yeah, it's a big challenge for the farmers, and she recognized to the fact, and they're like, I don't know what to do. She said it to me like, I don't know what to do and how to cater this issue, because that's like challenging the whole infrastructure, and
Hmm.
they really do not have answer what is happening and
I
how
think
to
it's also paradox. Yeah.
yeah.
It's also
And how to
paradox because the economy is booming, so they cannot stop that as well.
yeah, that's and they're like international stakeholders to their all the South Asian countries have their monasteries there. So there are around I think 100 plus monasteries in the town. And for example, Thailand has 11 monasteries. Tibet
Hmm.
has 15 plus monasteries and guest house, and there are always Kal Chakra Puja when Dalai Lama came to the town, and so many people at the one point of the time, like for 10 days, there are like 4 lakh people in the city. So
Hmm.
you see that where does that wastewater go? It stays in the city. Some of that get out to the Niranjana, the pious river, but at the end of the day, it's there.
Hmm. And anyway, we can keep on talking about this interesting part, but I have two important questions before I get into further discussion. One is a theoretical question and one is empirical from the work which you are doing. because you spoke so much about governance, and I feel now really I must ask this question, because you use the political economy framework in your work. I was just curious if you are aware of the interactive water governance framework, or and if you had explored. I'm sure you have read many frameworks, and you rightly mentioned it's the most difficult time of the year when you have to choose your theory and frameworks what you want to use. But before you chose into the urban political ecology, I mean, urban water metabolism is completely understandable. But when you thought of marrying with the urban political ecology, I'm sure you also struggled with how to really frame it within the urban water metabolism. Did you try to look at the idea of interactive water governance to identify where is the gap? Because I mean, I can really share with you that it will be hard with the urban political ecological approach to identify the nuances and the gaps within the governance system. So, I mean, would you not like to really work on the governance as an approach vis-a-vis political ecology as an approach? Because these are two different body of literature, scholarship. That's my first question from the philosophical side. And from the empirical side, I was intrigued from the point one when you started talking, and also when you shared your PPT, that you talk about pilgrims uh, uh, as tourists. So I'm just curious, why do you call them tourists? And I mean, of course, the satriarchal side of me also says that it is tourism, because I experienced it in Allahabad now. I mean, there I could barely find people with emotions and spirituality and religious feelings. But what is the reason that you are using the word tourism and not pilgrimage, especially
Okay.
because you said it is the center of the world for a particular religion. I mean, I should not use the word religion also, but for Buddhism, let's say, uh, what is the reason?
Okay. So answering your both of question, and I think I will try to attempt the first one first.
Please.
Talking about the framework and why I choose the one and why I was not so much interested into the governance part. That
Because
could
my
be
PhD is in urban lake governance, by the way. So I really
that's
thoroughly studied
right.
governance. So, and I was like, you are talking about governance all the time in the entire presentation,
Yeah,
but you don't
because
want to use it.
the reason that I was reading that, but the reason I chose political ecology over governance sort of framework, and there are many frameworks out there, because I want to center the people in my work,
Mhm. Hmm. But
and
doesn't governance also allow that?
yeah,
Because
governance
it's
allow
not
that, but
government. Huh? It's
for me to look at the micro politics of whatever aspect of gender and caste, I think because
Hmm.
was more important at this part of my
I
work.
get. Hmm.
And then because coming to the governance, the whole governance issue in my field, like the Bihar government and the whole was I did not want to touch that part of the story for a while, because given my position and my PhD is just for 3 years, so there's a very strong funding and that angle, because always there are always limitations that you operate
Of
within.
course.
That very strategically I chose that it always easier to talk to people, and my engagement with the people for so long really makes me comfortable to do that. That's like one of the strategies, just to do the things at the right time. And secondly, because I was want to center the people and people story to the more than just focus on all these governance, which is also part of the thing, because I'm
And
telling.
also, it's a very Western way of looking at a structure,
Yeah,
a
yeah. Because I'm
network.
also telling that part
Hmm.
of the governance, that how it affect, and also that story is there, but the focus is here for the meanwhile.
Hmm.
Maybe in my later of my work, I'm just 27. I should not say that, but maybe in the later of my work, I may look at the other aspects, and the research can take forward with a lot of issues, because I know I'm going to stick for to both Gaya for long, or maybe hard forever. So that was first. Second question is very interesting, and I think I've been was struggling with this while I was doing my master's and while I was publishing papers, and one of the reviewer asked the same question. Let me tell you,
It's a
they were
very
like, "Oh,
pertinent question, by the way.
yeah. It is obviously."
You
So
can't say there are tourists in Prayagraj. It's just like saying that, like in Varanasi,
yes,
and
yes,
same
yes,
as Bodh Gaya.
yes. And so then there comes a whole literature on Bodh Gaya exist. So Bodh Gaya is very well read area in terms of its
Yes.
religious, spiritual, cultural importance, and there are more than 100 plus books and publications out there. And there's one person called David Gare. He has been working in Bodh Gaya for 30 years, and he has been looking at the worldling practices and how South Asian tourism has transformed the whole landscape of Bodh Gaya in the last 2 decades fundamentally. So he says the re-emergence of Buddhism in the political domain, and then actually he uses the word tourism, and he has a whole argument to do that, because there's how Buddhism has become a symbol of, it's a symbol of secular and the peaceful world, but there's an angle to the West coming to the East for Buddhism, and that whole is with the you know with the idea of spirituality, but also more like tourism, because they want to explore the places and look at the places in a way that tourists do. So
It still have the comfort of the West and
yeah,
see
I still have the
the
comfort of the West. So if you're coming to the pilgrimage, but you're living in a five-star monastery or a hotel, and there is this whole
I could relate
yeah,
that.
there's a
That's probably the
reemergence
reason.
of like 300 hotel and monastery to cater this international and national pilgrimage in the in this site. So if that would be a pilgrimage, it would have been a different idea. And I have written this paper of the rural-urban dilemma of Bodh Gaya. And there I came to across this idea of first and second master plan of Bodh Gaya was visualized and analyzed and visioned Bodh Gaya as a small village. They never said, they said it is, they quoted one of the England architect Patrick as one of the famous England English architect, and they said that its population should never be increased more than 20,000. And they always wanted to keep it as a village. But the whole political liberalization happened, and that's how the pilgrimage became tourism. And you now aspire and say in all the city development planners, oh, Bodh Gaya has so much less population density. It cannot be a city. We need to make it a city. We need to put, government has its own idea of how city looks, and there are interventions that we need to do, make it a city. And they do it through administrative stunts, because Bodh Gaya, as I told, is fundamentally is still a cluster of village of around 25 villages. And literally this Mahadalit, Dalit, and all these intermediate and upper caste tolas in the town, and that cluster makes Bodh Gaya. And the rurality is still the same. So if you ever ask a person in, like, that was one of my paper, and I was asking, oh, where is, Bodh Gaya city is there, the Mahabodhi temple area is just 1 kilometer stretches city, we are village. And we have nothing to do with that. We are village.
That is also a very common disconnect now we see in these tourist hotspots, I mean, even the whole economy, the tourism is an economic connotation. The whole economy and the development is geared toward tourism, because that is going to bring money to the place. But whether that economy is used for the overall human development or growth of the place, that's a completely different ball game, and that is where the layers of society really makes it very, very intricate. But I can keep on talking to you on this matter, but we have to probably take it off the screen and do this talking further. But I will now, I think, close from my end and invite Ekta if she has any question, or maybe she can take the call for closing the session. But since Ekta is unaware of the next week, I must also announce for the next week. So next week, Friday, we have Lajja Kanubhai Patel as Friday Water Arts, a very well-known artist from Gujarat. And he's going to present his beautiful sketches from rural and across sector, and focusing on water, of course. And on 19th, which is Wednesdays for water, we have Usha Rajgopalan ma'am And we are going to continue with the Lake Pond series and look at the role of community in collective action. So this Wednesday, we had role of rural community in collective action, and with Usha Rajgopalan ma'am, we are going to focus on urban community in collective action. So over to you, Ekta.
Thank you, Mansee. Thank you, Ritika. It's really a wonderful session. I prepared few notes to summarize the session. It was really very, you know, engrossing. I was just listening to you. So it was, you started with 2001 and now 2024, how the, population has increased and how the tourism impact has increased. And instead of as nowadays we are talking about the better infrastructure, but actually this better infrastructure has reduced availability of the water for the residents. In a few times also, we discussed about the how tourism can impact the local resources for the local people. So tourism, to increase the tourism, how we are ignoring the local residents. The important points that and still it's even after 1947, now we are in 2024. This was all the history that Dalits, SCs and all, still there is a discrimination among the resources for the tribes and all. So this is really very, even after 47 to 24, still we are not able to cope up and reduce and finish this. No, I won't talk about the reduce. This is the wrong word. In fact, we should think that we need to finish this discrimination. So still we are struggling on this discrimination. And you talked about the leakage, where we all are facing the water problems. We all are saying the north is the commodity, and next war will be on the water, and still we are not able to solve the problems of the leakage. So there is a gap where people are using the swimming pools. They are building this private swimming pools also. If we are here, we talked about the monasteries and the hotels. That is a different part. Even the resourceful are building the swimming pools and the water bodies at their home, where another category where they don't have even the to drink. Yeah. So another thing I learned today is water supply and sanitation. We can't, these two things has to go side by side. If we are supplying the water, then at the same time we have to make proper sanitation system to treat the wastewater. So right now is the need to treat the wastewater and reuse it. There are a lot of infrastructure, a lot of funds are spent on this. And what I feel that we should learn, we common people should learn that this money is from us only, that we are paying through the taxes. If we have to involve, we have to be responsible for all these developments. We should take care of this instead of playing the authorities or the this. We should consider that how we are taking the responsibility for our own resources. So that's the take. There are a lot of points, but without taking much time. So uh, we would like to thank you, Mansi, for giving me the opportunity to join these sessions. And really, Ritika, this is really great to hear from you and learning your about your research and how you are pointing a lot of issues that we all know, but we don't put our mind into it, so that these are the problems and we find out the solutions. So development is not just doing anything. Development is about how we are solving the problems. Development is not providing a lot of things to everybody, to some category and to some another category. It is about the equality, how the equal resources, the natural resources, which is our birthright. We are the human right. These, not only the humans, every organism has the equal rights for the natural resources, and we humans are exploiting few. I say that all the humans, we few humans are exploiting these resources to the extent that the other categories and the other equal, जो हमारे all the stakeholders are not able to use these resources. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mansi. And
Thank
I think
you.
Mansi has announced the upcoming sessions. So it's
Yes.
time to say bye, but not the goodbye. We will be coming up with the fresh sessions of the water research, and it's really a thing. And I invite all of you to join us on for the water sessions, not only on the Fridays, but on Monday, Wednesday, and the Friday. And for
So,
the details, follow us on our social media links as well as visit our website. All the links are in the chat box. Thank you so much. We will be
oh, I
back
can.
with another sessions.
I can announce the next thesis club is on April 25th with Asim Khanal. He is studying, he's doing his PhD at, interestingly, at Vancouver, but he's from Nepal and he's going to talk about waterfronts. And stay tuned for next PhD thesis club. So we have thesis club assigned until June. So definitely we know that we are going until June. 3 researchers are already lined up. So super excited with all young researchers and very hopeful when we see them working on these important subjects, and best wishes to you, Rikita. Do make
Thank
us
you.
proud, but also do solve the problem as much as you can humanly possible.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye
Bye.
bye.